9:01, I'll call this to order, June the 30th, 2014 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. I do note that we have a quorum. Don't see Pastor McNeese here. I'll ask Dr. Gary Houseman to give the invocation. Would everybody please stand and remain standing for the pledge?
Let's pray. Father, as we come together today, we are thankful for this opportunity to discuss the business of the county. And Father, as we go through these discussions, let us do it and the decisions that we make with an attitude of care and concern and consideration. Father, please give us the discernment to make the decisions that would be most pleasing to you and most helpful to the citizens of our county. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody this morning. Thanks for attending. We'll move right into the agenda. We have citizens' time. Miss Myers, did you sign up? I don't have the clipboard.
Just me. Do you need it? Yeah. Okay. Good morning, gentlemen. I'd like to address this morning the Rural Retreat Fair Board. It's been brought to your attention how ineffectual the board is. Their activity or lack of activity is counterproductive for Wythe County. I'm asking you to take steps to formally request their resignations and by mutual agreement void their contract with the county. We should seek interested, motivated, and forward-thinking individuals who will be interested in a committee membership. The question of contract, such as the one that is currently in place, does not address any performance issues or their lack of performance, and such a contract should not be written in the future. We had an event there on Saturday at the Horse Arena. We had 221 teams participating. We had a big crowd of people, and we could utilize that to the benefit of all Wythe County residents and surrounding areas a great deal more than is happening. So I wish you would put that on your agenda.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ms. Myers.
And then I'm always sparring with Mr. Dalton about VACO, and I need to fill a prescription, and I'd like to know how I can partake of the savings that we're getting. As a taxpayer, we're putting out $17 grand a year, and I was wondering if there was any way I can do that.
We'll get some information to you, Ms. Myers.
Also, I have asked for a salary schedule to be printed for the last 2 months, and I have not seen that on the website, so here is a formal FOIA request for that information to be posted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens wishing to speak during citizens' time? Hearing none, I'll close citizens' time, and we're going to take about a 5-minute recess. Continuing with the agenda. Next thing on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting and public hearing of June the 10th, 2014. Have a motion?
I make a motion we approve minutes as presented.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Gene?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And the chair will abstain. I wasn't here at the last meeting. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the payment of invoices.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we pay the invoices as presented.
I have a second.
Second.
Does any board member have any invoice they'd like to discuss? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Houseman?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is a presentation of the NCIS Plus collections. Mr. Dalton?
We have with us a representative.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Good morning. I want to thank you all for the invitation to appear and meet with you. My name is Harv Plattig, and I'm a National Director for NCS Plus Incorporated, and my specific role has been mostly to develop the government side of the NCS Plus service model. And I'm very thankful to be here with all of you this morning. Appreciated that opening prayer, by the way. NCS Plus Incorporated is a 30-year national debt collection company headquartered in New York City. We've served well over 25,000 clients in that 30-year history. And I've been with NCS Plus since 2008. It's been, as I mentioned, my role to build the government entity arm of the NCS Plus service model. In 2008, the city of New York commissioned a study that I find a little humorous. They spent over $1 million to study the problem of unpaid water bills in the city. And that $1 million we could have used for a lot of things. But the conclusions were very valid. And those three conclusions and recommendations made were, number one, turn off the water. Number two, raise the rates. And then third and last, collect the debt. And I know it's not funny, but it's humorous to me that had to be a $1 million study. But part of that is because our industry, the debt collection industry, doesn't carry a great reputation for good public service. And to stand up and tell people, oh, but we're different, is one thing. To show a design that's different that makes it impossible for it to be anything but an improvement is what I'm here to talk about. And so I'd like to give you a brief presentation about NCS Plus. We actually did serve the City of New York Water Department and collected millions of dollars for them at a very small cost to collect. I believe their collection cost, last time I checked it, was under 5%. I can't always promise that. We use a flat fee model, which is why I don't always know what your collection cost will be as a percentage, but I will show you examples, and then I'll show you how we back our service as we work on the outcomes. We're really seeking to revolutionize debt recovery, and believe me, it does need it. The debt collection industry, though it has many fine professionals working in it, I want to say, it lends itself to certain activities that are not in the best interest of the client. That's because the typical debt collection contract is written on a contingency basis only. When a contingency contract is written, it means a debt collector is only paid a percentage of what they collect, which incentivizes the collector to find the easy stuff, collect that, get their percentage, and move on to somebody else's easy stuff. So we call that cherry picking, and I'm going to show you what the antidote to that is. So when we say revolutionizing debt recovery, we're really talking about a different design for attacking the problem instead of the debtor. Collecting receivables in today's economy, everybody wants the same things, I'm sure, and that is, number one, to know the process has unquestionable integrity, number two, that it's going to be effective, and number three, that the cost is something that is reasonable or best in class. This is a Dun & Bradstreet Open Ratings Survey, which I've furnished a copy of to you in paper form this morning. And this survey was done without our knowledge. We had hired a company to help us with our GSA rating certification for the federal government level, and they commissioned this Dun & Bradstreet survey without our knowledge, and then we received the results of it one day in the mail. It's kind of like getting our report card without knowing it was coming, so that was good. At least what this tells us, we got a 94 out of 100 from our clients, and on reliability they gave us a 98%. We were very grateful for that. It's not because we're the good guys and everybody else is the bad guys. It's because what we do proves itself through a transparent process that everybody understands when they engage in it, so it has the effect of building trust with our client base over time. And trust is the one thing that is definitely needed when this activity is undertaken, and we understand that. Our clients tend to stay with us for a long time. We don't make a whole lot of money on the initial engagement with a client, but that really isn't the goal. The goal is a long-term service relationship. NYU's been using us to collect their debt for over 20 years. This is our relationship with the Florida Association of Counties. In 2008, I called up the executive director of FAC, asked him if he'd be interested in developing a government debt recovery program together. He said, no, absolutely not. He said, we never partner with debt collectors because they skim and cherry pick the accounts. We don't think that's equitable process. Really appreciate your call today. And I said, well, while the wind's whistling through the receiver on its way back home, let me tell you there's another way to go about this. And so I described to him what I'll briefly describe to you today. That turned into 2 years of them vetting us from every possible angle, which turned into then an RFP being issued where all our competitors could come and meet us on open ground and compete for the same opportunity prize, which was a master agreement with the Florida Association of Counties that was based on Pasco County providing a piggybackable contract. So since that time, we did win it in 2010, and since that time, we've brought on over 40 government agency clients, and they've been very satisfied with the results. All of the bid documents that make up, this is really the basis of our government work now nationwide, all the bid documents that make up that whole transaction are posted on the Florida Association of Counties website. Florida Local Governmental Purchasing Network, we started to get a good fire burning in terms of a good client base that we're happy, so we reached out to Colorado, Utah, New York, and state of Virginia. We've worked with the state of Virginia, or VACO, specifically toward this relationship for several years and have recently made it official. So we are now working with VACO. Jim Campbell, the executive director, has been instrumental. Dean Lynch, both of them have been instrumental in getting us on board. And so we're really just coming into Virginia now. So we began with the Virginia Association of Counties, and Jim Campbell recommended very intensely that I make a way to get to the Treasurers Association of Virginia meeting last weekend, which we were able to do. So I did get to meet your treasurer, as a matter of fact, at the Treasurers Association of Virginia annual conference. I want to show you some numbers. The typical debt collection company has been getting in the government space something like a 4% gross recovery rate. Department of Justice of the United States is getting less than a 4% recovery rate on its own debt. When Mr. Atwater, the CFO to the state of Florida, sent my team and me up to visit with the Department of Financial Services for the state of Florida, I finished my presentation there. Christine Smith, the head of the Department of Financial Services, said, you know that 4%? I said, yep. She goes, well, that's our number too. I said, okay, I think it's pretty reliable. We've seen this in many. What we start with for a client normally is we do a free accounts receivable analysis. We'll sit down and take a look at what your current situation is and how we might be able to help you. Typically what we find is if they're employing a debt collection agency, they've been somewhere in this range during the down economy, and right now it's starting to go up, so that's good. But the point is to have a benchmark for comparison. If you were spending, say, 25% cost to collect, and I know doing a little bit of just cursory research, I saw you have some water utilities debt that we might be able to help you with. I hope I've got that right, but I'll learn more from you as we get to know each other, if that's possible. But whatever you may be spending with a debt collection agency, it could be anywhere from 20 to 40% or more, sometimes less. But if it was 25%, then all the county would get to keep is the 3% net back that comes out of the process. Everything else is just process. Point is, if you're only getting a 4% gross recovery rate, you could make it free, and your prospects still aren't that great. Because if all you're going to get is a 4% gross, that's the cap on how good it could be, even if it was done by a charity. So we're seeking to address the kind of problems that government agencies have been facing. I will show you some hard numbers in a little bit, but I want to show you what all of us have been up against since especially 2008 with what they call DSO, or Day Sales Outstanding. Normally, DSO only moves up or down about a half a day a year. And so it creeps very slowly. But between '06 and '07, it made a big break in the wrong direction. as the days sales outstanding, the amount of time it takes people to pay their bills went up to almost 41 days. And now if you'll remember that big leap between '06 and '07, you'll see how it looks compared to 2009 and 2010. The dam really broke in 2009 and 10. So people's ability or willingness, and it's many times both, sometimes it's one or the other, to pay was severely affected in the down economy. Everybody knows that. But those are some numbers. So for us, it was about turning that crisis into opportunity. We knew we were facing everybody having a tough time simultaneously, people closing things down, et cetera. And the first thing we had to establish was that we're not going to do a better job collecting debt by being unpleasant, unkind, or unfair with the citizens that owe the money, because that's just the reverse of what would be needed. So our process isn't new to this economy. It's always been this way, but this is the mission statement that we're able to have because of our design and our flat fee. We provide what we call restorative recoveries. That is a real concept here. The typical debt collector calls up on the phone and says, I'm Harv the debt collector, pay me the money that you owe Wythe County. Our debt collectors call up on the telephone and say, I'm Harv the debt collector, pay Wythe County the money that you owe Wythe County. Nobody wants either one of those phone calls. But the fact of the matter is, when someone receives the second type of phone call, it never sets off the kind of unpleasantness and lack of trust that the first type of phone call engenders. So we call it a restorative recovery because we're restoring the communication and the payment path between the citizen and the public agency to whom they owe the money. Recently, I met with St. Johns County, Florida EMS. We've been serving them for 2 years, and we've outperformed their last collection agency by 13.47 to 1. And Karen, the head of billing there, told me, Harv, your numbers are great. But she said, that's not my favorite difference between you guys and the previous agency that was serving us for 12 years. My favorite difference is the fact that I used to get these phone calls that would curl my hair from citizens who were so upset about hearing from our debt collection agency. She said, since you guys started doing this, I never get one of those phone calls. Because people understand that the money is going to the place it belongs, not through the hands of someone they absolutely would not and probably should not trust, which is a third party that claims to represent the government to them. So a restorative recovery is free then to be done in an atmosphere of positive reinforcement and just compliance. What we mean by positive reinforcement, first of all, we have that attitude when we're working with people, but secondly, when they pay in full, no extra charge to the county, we send them a thank you letter. And it establishes the fact that they are in good standing, they've taken care of the problem, and it also gives them proof that it's all over with, and it reinforces the right behavior of getting the matter taken care of. And then the just compliance side of it is that there are going to be people that, with all our good intentions, are still not going to pay. So there has to be some follow-through. And the follow-through, in most instances, is going to be that it affects their credit. It will go on their credit report. And that will then give them an opportunity to prepare themselves to improve their credit score by simply coming back and paying the county. When the county is paid, the staff in the county department that we're serving simply notates something in the web portal that we build for you, and that tells us to go ahead and report the payment on the next credit reporting cycle to the major credit bureaus, which is what we do. Our vision is a comprehensive solution that treats the entire problem with best practices and bottom line accountability. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, we're treating the entire problem because we're not cherry picking. If you put 10,000 cases in today, then 10,000 first letters go out of our center in New York that week. And from that point forward, every single one of those cases is going to receive a minimum of 5 letters. Our fourth is an attorney letter. They're going to receive a minimum of 3 live telephone calls. If we find a bad address, we use resources called skip tracing. LexisNexis, Accurant, CBC and Novus are a couple of companies that help us with this. And our system has enough technology baked into it that it automatically seeks out a new address once a week for about 5 months, once we find a bad address. So it's a comprehensive solution that's going after the entire problem to set everything in order. And then there has to be best practices because it's required. And then bottom line accountability is this: because we charge a fixed or a flat fee instead of a contingency amount, and I'm thinking that the cost to the county would probably be something in the $12 to $15 per case range of what we're talking about here today. That amount is backed with a 400% return on investment guarantee. So every dollar that's spent by the county to recover debt for the county, and there has to be a qualification, it has to be less than a year in age, and it has to be a certain balance size, but it's a very reasonable set of requirements, not a trick to make you think there's a guarantee when there isn't. The requirements are valid, they're real. I can put you on the phone with people that will tell you that. But we back it with a 400% return on investment guarantee, so that if we fall short of at least quadrupling the investment that you make in hiring us, then we will work for free until we get you there. Now, we only do that on your initial order because after that, you're not going to need it. It's all usually done in the beginning where the setup is going on and we're cleaning out the old problems. That's usually where the lowest performance will happen. Our values are fair and balanced treatment of all stakeholders for sustainable excellence in receivables management. Like I said, we're not going to have a big windfall profit on the day we might sign a county if you decided to allow us to work for you. But what we will have is the beginning of a relationship that can be a stable, solid service relationship for a long time, and that's what we're after. What we found, instead of cherry picking, lo and behold, roll up your sleeves and go to work. And every single case being worked, a lot of the times people will say to you, or they'll say to me, well, you can't collect from these people, they don't have any money. I'm so often pleasantly surprised by folks who are cash customers. Maybe they don't have great credit, maybe they don't make a huge income, but they're very proud of the fact that they keep up with their responsibilities and pay their bills. A lot of people like that who hear from us come in and get it taken care of. So being faithful to work the entire batch brings out some very interesting things. These are the components that make up our system. We build a transparent live web portal that's secure for the county. So those who are authorized have a login, and they can literally see what's happening with every one of the cases in real time, 24/7, 365. All of our letters and our phone calls are fully compliant. Our vice president is actually the past president of the New York State Collectors Association, and he's just one of those people that loves paperwork. So he's the guy who keeps us licensed and bonded in every state that requires it. If you know anything about debt collection, there are very few fully national debt collection agencies. That's because nobody wants to live through that much paperwork. It is really unbelievable how much it takes to do that. But our guy loves it. He does it. We have skip tracing built in, and the credit reporting to the major credit bureaus is one of the great services that we are able to provide, all for a fixed fee. This is what we actually do on every claim. So if you put a water bill in there, or an emergency services bill, or a tax bill, or a code enforcement violation bill, or a property damage bill, parking fees, lot mowing fees, I mean, we've seen maybe not at all, but probably close to have seen it all. Every one of those cases gets worked in the exact same method, and what changes the activity is when they pay. So if they make a payment arrangement with the county can suspend the collection activity while they're making payments. If they stop making payments, the county can have us restart the collection activity. There's no extra charge for any of this. I quoted a price, that's the price, and have us restart it up to a year later, and we will just continue with the letters and phone calls from that point forward. If they make partial payments, we'll keep sending letters at the new lower balance. And when they pay in full, if you choose the optional thank you letter, then we send it on your behalf. So it's all built into the process, and it continues allowing you to see what's going on so that you're on top of the situation. Let me mention another point that's important to counties, and that is that if you decide to settle the debt for less than the face value. And I know the most common place I've seen this is in code enforcement, because code enforcement violations carry big penalties that accrue, some of them on a daily basis. And sometimes there's some latitude from the county's perspective as to how much of that face value is going to be required to settle it. And so if you want to make a settlement for any reason, you make that decision, not us. That's another difference. If you're working with a contingency debt collector and you tell them to go after a $5,000 balance, then you want to close it out 6 months later, they want their percentage of that $5,000. If you send it to us, first of all, we're not getting a 20% of that $5,000. We're getting the same $12 to $15 I quoted earlier. But if you decide that the right thing to do is to settle it for $1,500, there's no difference in what you pay us, and there is no voice on our side as to whether you can settle it or not. That's completely in the hands of the county. So you're not giving up the power of the relationship with the citizen when you bring us in. We're supporting your policies and not requiring things of you. This is what it looks like when we're working these. Now, these are water utility bills that are very collectible, the ones I'm about to show you. If you've got older ones, which I'm sure you do, the performance will be lower, but it'll be commensurately big compared to what you would get otherwise. Here is what we've brought for this. This is Pasco County water bills. 29.79% on this particular batch that I chose is about $67,000 batch. And we brought in a 29.79% gross recovery. Their cost to collect is down around 5%. That we would not know at the beginning. We charged them the same. I think their price is $11.70 because they're doing a good amount of volume with us. That price, as we look back, can be looked at as a percentage. It worked out to 5.88%. Their net back then is 28.5%, and out of the $67,000 batch, they got net cash after we were paid of $18,707. Their return on investment, I mentioned earlier, we have a 400% return on investment guarantee. $4 in for every dollar that we've charged in the fixed fee. We're on the hook for that. Their return on investment on this batch was 1,698%. Usually, as I said, it's only the initial order that we need the guarantee. By then, we are dialed in and everything is working right, and it's going to be more than that. Finally, their net improvement with us is a whopping difference. And this thing happens all the time. These are some government agencies' case studies, and all of these numbers were attained in the down economy. This was all in the post-2008 period. So we're not going back to earlier times and pulling numbers from there. This is real stuff that we've been doing right now with government entities. This is what our letter set looks like. The letters all look different because then people read them. It's a funny thing when you know you don't want to read something and then you get another one that looks just like it. It's kind of easy to throw it in the trash. So we put some variety in the letter set, different size paper and different size envelopes, different color paper, always with the same FDCPA required wording. Right on the screen here, you see a choice between two letters. For the first letter, one can be a more strong, simple collection letter. That's the one on the left. The other can be a balance verification letter, which is a more diplomatic way to open the letter set and the communication. And there's one that you see here is for healthcare. That would be good for EMS. Then the other one on the left there is a simpler one that would be used for things like utilities, etc. So each one of the letters looks different. That's the point of putting them up there so you can see it. And then this is a look inside the web portal, and yes, I've blurred out most of the information, but the idea is you can see the level of detail that the county has access to through the secure web portal. We have nothing to hide. As a matter of fact, we prefer the more eyes, the better of those authorized in the county because there's safety in a multitude of counselors. So sometimes people will see things that help us understand, or they understand, hey, we could use it for this or we could use it for that. There are actually some custom filters where you can run all kinds of reports, and I won't get into all that stuff, but it's very full-featured web portal with a lot of custom reporting that you can do. But this is just an aggregated list in a particular client's portal, where I think they've got about 26,000 cases in this particular list. That we work with healthcare, hospitals, et cetera. They get much larger numbers usually than government entities do. But it shows 9 different levels of summary outcomes. It also shows on the far right how many letters have been sent. There's a number column that shows you how many letters we sent before the outcome attained is noted. And then to the right of that number is a 2-letter code, which is explained down in that gray bar, that tells you this was paid in full, or it was partially paid, or it was settled in full, or payment arrangements are ongoing, that sort of thing. Then if you click on the blue number on the far left, it pulls up the individual claim screen. And that individual screen shows you every phone call, every letter, the name of our collector who spoke to them on the phone, what time of day it was, when the letters were mailed. Yes, most people don't have time to look at all this detail on a regular basis, but by golly, if there's one you're wondering about, and you want to see everything that's going on, you drill down in a few seconds and there it is. This particular one I'm proud of because it came from Charlotte County Utilities in Florida, and it's over $11,059 paid in full by one of the big 3 banks. The bank had taken over this property and they wouldn't pay the county the utility bill. I think when they saw our attorney letter, they decided to just stroke a check. So the cost to collect this was $11.25, just like all their other cases. So that's a quick overview of what makes us different. I put a piece on the table for you called Revenue 911. It gives you a sense of what we do. And if you would give us the privilege, we'd love to provide you with an accounts receivable analysis and show you what we could do. We appreciate the invitation to present to you and meet you all today. Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can elaborate on that would be helpful?
Well, thank you for your presentation. And what's your name? I didn't catch it.
I'm sorry. My name is Harv Plattig, and I'm National Director with NCS Plus.
Do you currently have any Virginia clients?
We are just getting into Virginia, so the answer to that is no. So far, we have Virginia medical clients, but we do not have any Virginia government entities signed up yet. I came out of last weekend's meeting with probably 4 good leads of people that want to get something going very soon. But we have quite a few government clients now around the country that can give you good references. And of course, Jim Campbell did a lot of checking before he brought us in to Virginia.
Mr. Plattig, how many, like Florida, how many county governments do y'all represent in Florida?
We've got 40 or more government municipality clients, so some of those are cities, some of those are counties. I haven't really counted up the difference of how many of them there are, but it's 40 or more government agency clients last time I counted. It's a little higher than that now. We keep signing up about 1 to 3 each month down in Florida right now.
Mr. Housman, do you have any questions? Anybody else have any questions? Jane? Mr. Dahl? Well, thank you for your presentation.
Pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming.
It's great to be here.
Okay, we'll move on in with our agenda. Move into unfinished business. VDOT 6-year plan, Mr. Jeff Russell. Mr. Russell, you want to come up?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here, I suppose we will follow up on the 6-year plan, what was presented, and I can answer any questions or entertain any requests you all may have, so.
Where we're at, is I'd called Mr. Russell this last week after we reported out the 6-year plan. Mr. Russell indicated to me that we shouldn't have done what we done of adding roads without any money on the plan. I in fact am here today to talk about that because we can get a chance. I can't sign the plan. He can't sign it.
My understanding was that the board had wanted to add some additional roads to this year's plan prior to approving it. Kind of like I said when my initial presentation, the meeting, the budget was cut from last year to this year. So we did not take any roads off of the plan I presented, but we really don't have room to add anything. If we go to adding roads that conceivably we can't fund within the next 6 years, then we're going to be back to the same position we were prior to 2009. We're going to have a 20-year plan instead of a 6-year plan. And that was the driving factor in 2009 when we took all these roads. It's on our resolution. That's why we took those off, to make it a valid 6-year plan. So really don't want to add anything that we don't have funding to support.
So you're saying we need to go back and accept the 6-year plan that you presented?
That's, even at that, with the cut we received this year, there's still 3 roads, I believe. There's still 4 projects on what we presented that we had added last year. You've got Myrtle Lane, Sharons Drive, 2 projects. Basically have very little money going on them within the next 6 years. We added those last year, looking at the figures we were given, but we received a pretty good cut this year, so that took funding off of those projects. We left them on the plan. There's $20,888 in the 6th year of the plan just to support having them on here. We didn't want to take it off once it was on, but basically what I'm saying is we don't have room to add any more plans, any more projects with the money we're given this year.
Does any board member have any questions for Mr. Russell?
Well, if I may, Mr. Russell, I'm a little confused maybe exactly what the board's role in the 6-year plan is. I mean, I thought that the board had decided which roads we wanted to put on. And, I didn't realize that it was, contingent on available funding, because we don't know what the funding, is going to be. And I think that the idea I thought the 6-year plan was that's the order of operations that we wanted those roads. But I guess just for my own edification, I don't know exactly. I'm confused as to exactly what the role of the board is in the 6-year plan.
It's a joint effort between VDOT and the Board of Supervisors. What projects do you all want to see your local roads, and in what priority order? So the board, you all, we have public hearings. We take input from the citizens. The board, in conjunction with VDOT, decides what roads do we want to put on. But there has to be funding to support the projects throughout that 6 years. We just, you can't, it's not just a list of however many projects. You're kind of limited to the amount of funding, such as this year's funding. We've got $2.9 million throughout 6 years. Conceivably, that means we can put $2.9 million worth of projects on the plan.
But about the only control that the county has as far as VDOT goes is the 6-year plan. I mean, we don't maintain roads or anything like that, and I thank you all for being very responsive to anything that we send in. But basically, you're saying it's in conjunction, but, and I'm not saying this argumentatively, but VDOT takes precedence. What VDOT's view with the 6-year plan takes precedence over the board? And again, I'm just trying to understand. I'm not,
In what aspect?
in the aspect of,
How much you can put on?
yeah,
We're given a limit. I guess in answer to your question, yes, we're not going to put projects on that we can't fund. But now I will say that the projects that are on the plan that we've put on since 2009 has come from the Board of Supervisors resolution. So we're working with you all. We're putting the projects you want on as the funding becomes available.
may I offer a compromise, and I don't know if this is the correct way to do it. If VDOT cannot put those roads that we named on the 6-year plan, is there anything that we can do in the minutes, whether it's in the minutes or resolution or whatever, that the next time that the 6-year plan is available for review, that we add those roads in that order? And not through the 6-year plan, but something that we internally have decided. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Dalton, is there any way that we can set that up that these roads will be added when some roads come off of the 6-year plan, we'd redo the 6-year plan, that these will be the roads that go on?
I believe the road you put on last time, Greasy Creek is still on the schedule, or the original resolution, so it would be the next one, but New Bethel, Connors Valley.
There were just those three.
Now there's one more.
Major grant.
Major Grant. I think you could pass a resolution that says that those, when funding becomes available, those will be put on in that order.
And that way, we're sensitive to the comments at the public hearing and sensitive to the people, but yet we don't violate anything that VDOT is doing.
I might add that if you take that route, basically what you're doing is the same thing as the resolution from 2009, which says the board requests that these roads be put back on the plan in this order as funding becomes available.
Right.
And that's essentially the same thing. Now, times have changed, our regulations have changed since 2009 and today. Our restrictions, our hands are tied a lot more, new environmental rules and stuff. So what might have qualified for a rural rustic project now may not. And the cost associated, if we can do something rural rustically, you know, I've mentioned it before, $250,000 a mile to construct a road. If it can't be done rural rustically, your price tag jumps to $2.5 to $3 million. So the new roads that you put on the resolution, I would be cautious, maybe put terminology in there that kind of gives you all a safety net to where if this road can't be done rural rustically, we may want to rethink it. Because if you put a project on there that we haven't evaluated.
So you're basically saying that we can list the roads and we want to put back on in this order, you know, contingent upon the fact that they meet the standards for rural rustic at the time that funding is available.
You know, I haven't evaluated the roads that you may or may not put on the resolution.
Yeah, but
If they don't go rural rustic,
But what you're saying, Mr. Russell, I think in a couple of years, the standards for rural rustic may change.
They
And
could.
so that's what I'm saying. So it would be contingent upon them meeting the standards for rural rustic at the time that funding is available for, you know, to be placed on the 6-year plan.
right. Now, a project doesn't have to be rural rustic, but
Right, well,
do you want to spend $3 million to do 1 mile, or do you want to spend your $3 million to do 10 miles? You know, it's,
and I don't know how the board feels about it, I just throw that out.
Do you suggest that we have you to evaluate these roads before we do the resolution.
Well, that would give you an idea of of the price it's going to be before it hits the plan. I just wanted to caution y'all, don't commit to something, and then when the price tag comes in that's astronomical,
I understand.
you've done made the commitment.
Does anybody else have any questions? for Mr.
What
Russell?
column is Sharon Road in now?
There are two projects on, for Sharon's Drive, and I think they were, of the last projects we did add, right now with the cut that we received from last year to this year, we've got $21,000 programmed to that in the 6th year of this current program.
Right now, it would qualify as a rural rustic.
I would have to go out there and look at the project. Evidently, it does to have that price tag on it.
Yeah, it must have some value as a connector road
Now, let me,
because it,
Well, Sharon's Road where it turns off of 749 is hard time, going up the hill.
right,
Yeah, but you go down there about a mile and a half, 2 miles, and then it becomes dirt.
Yeah, after beyond Sharon Baptist Church, it turns into a dirt road and also going back up into Hawthorne Hollow.
No, Hawthorne Holler's paved.
It's paved? Oh, didn't realize.
is all of Sharon's Drive on your bus route?
None of it is now.
Okay. My question is why the road's important enough to be on there. There's not that many people live on it. Is it a connector road from Ward Branch Road, or why is it even on there?
I can't tell you why it was put on, except for maybe we had citizens come and ask for it to be put on, because, I mean, there's quite a few houses on one end of it, but that end would connect to gravel roads. So, I mean, you would basically have a paved section out in the middle of a bunch of gravel roads if you just did that one end. But I don't know why it was put on that resolution in that order. I mean, I can't, I'm lucky I can remember what I had for breakfast, Joe. Don't ask me what we did 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, Jeff said that went on there last year, didn't he?
I
don't-
standing here, I don't
But
know. when it was-
we just took it off of our resolution and put it on.
It was one of the roads.
mean, it was one that was on that
prior to
resolution.
2009.
Oh,
It came off of that resolution from the board at that time, so.
And actually, it may have been on the 6-year plan before I ever came on. I'm not sure.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Russell? So, Mr. Dalton, we need to go back and approve the previous 6-year
Currently,
plan.
the way the rules of procedures are, somebody has to vote on the positive side, which was everybody, needs to bring it back up for reconsideration based off Mr. Russell's comments, because currently, the way I understand it, we have a plan, y'all have adopted a plan which is different from VDOT. We can't amend the plan unless VDOT approves it, so I can't sign it. So y'all have to reconsider it, adopt the two items, the 6-year plan is presented, and the second resolution to place those roads on there in the future when funds become available.
And those are two separate items.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then I did vote for it, so on the positive side, I will bring it back up that we adopt the 6-year plan as presented by VDOT. However, when we finish that, I'll make another motion.
Well, okay, you want to bring it up to reconsider the vote.
Reconsider,
the
right.
6-year plan.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do a roll call vote. Gene?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that we do a resolution like we had done before, and that when funding is available, if they meet the, the criteria that we add those roads back. You said that Greasy Creek is still on there?
It's on the old
It's on the-
resolution.
Greasy Creek's on the original 6-year.
Okay, all right, that we add, and I forgot what order, Gene, you said Greasy Creek first and then New Bethel? And then, okay.
is it
and
that
then,
order?
Major Grand? Oh, or Connors Valley.
Was Back Road on there?
No.
I was thinking it was. Because to me, that's a road that needs it. I mean, it's not but about a mile, mile and a half long, and there's 14 or 15 houses down it.
Well, and maybe we don't need to adopt this today because it doesn't
Right.
affect you.
Why don't we give Mr. Russell a list of the roads and let him look at them, and if they qualify in the rural rustic at this point, then we can look at it and pass a resolution and look at them and decide which order we want to put them on there.
I'd be in favor of that.
But now we need a
I think that
motion.
sounds like a good idea. You need a motion to do that, or?
No, we haven't, we can just dispense of that motion. But we do need to have a motion to accept the 6-year plan as presented at the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion.
I have a second.
I'll second that. That's presented as VDOT
Yes.
presented it.
Any other discussion? No roll call vote. Dr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Motion passes 6-0 to adopt the 6-year plan as presented by VDOT. While you're up here, Mr. Russell, does any other board member have anything to discuss about roads or any maintenance that needs to be done? Mr. Hale?
Jeff, in this new task that you were just asked to do, is there any possibility we could do something different in evaluating these 4 that you've been asked to look at? If we were looking at this with a clear view, it would seem like to me you would give a value on the traffic count and the value on what it costs you to maintain it out of your limited maintenance budget, instead of the way we've been doing these things. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you've got certain roads that cost a lot more money per mile to maintain than other roads do, it's just not equivalent mile per mile, is it?
No, that'd be a difference.
Because of drainage and elevation and grade and all those things. So has anybody ever thought about using those as some criteria of them being qualified on a 6-year plan? Being traffic count would cover whether they were a major connector road, how many people lived on it, and then what does it cost y'all to maintain these roads? That whole group that was in here with that public hearing, it wouldn't have taken much money to make all those people happy, because they were talking about a half a mile here and a half a mile there. And most of them where it was paved on both ends, but we'd never taken care of the trouble spot in the middle. So is there any possibility to use that in your thought process with your recommendations for a 6-year plan?
When we evaluate these roads, we'll put all that data together. And then we as a department can prioritize the routes according to which we think would get the most bang for a buck to address those type issues, and then let the board, you all can review it and give your recommendations and the order of priority you'd like to see it in. So that's something we can put together.
And while you're up here, so today won't be a total waste of your time, I want to thank you and Andy for the work in Connors Valley and for the work that Andy's been doing on Archer Road. I think we're there. I'll stop by and pick up that last package. We'll be good. Thank you.
Is anyone else? Mr. Russell, I had a call this morning right before the board meeting, Ms. Callahan at 1029 Smith Hollow Road. The ditch, she says the ditch is filled up across and the culvert, and all the water is running across the road and down her driveways to her house and to her barn. She said somebody had done some construction and the ditch had filled up and it's grassed over now and all the water. I think she did say that she'd called the 800 number and y'all have something on it, but she said that, you know, the big rain they had yesterday out there, and she said it's tearing the driveway all to pieces, so.
We'll take a look.
Okay, appreciate it. Does anyone else have anything for Mr. Russell?
I want to thank him for fixing the ditch going up Speedwell Hill. And it looks a whole lot better than it did. Don't look as good as it should, but a whole lot better than it was. When we get it all redone, then it'll look better.
And I appreciate your response to that, call I got on Dutton Hollow Road. That
Right.
whole, that's kind of unusual.
It happens from time to time.
Yeah, okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Russell, for coming.
Thank y'all.
Okay, moving on with the agenda, since all of our board members is present now. We'll go into an unfinished business B, Wythe County Ordinance 99.-2 Solid Waste Amendment Number 2. You have it passed out in front of you, Mr. Dalton.
The board held their public hearing a couple of weeks ago. We had several citizens speaking to the subject. I would propose, and as you'll see later in the budget discussions, that we've removed all revenue in FY15 concerning a solid waste fee from the proposed revenue budget. I would suggest that we consider changing the wording, eliminating the $100 fee, and changing the wording in the following manner, which is less onerous, I guess, based off the comments we received from the public hearing, is under 7.4 disposal fees, item 1. Change all that from that big long sentence to there shall be an annual solid waste fee set by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors. Strike all the other wording. Number 2, the wording should be the solid waste fee shall be due and payable after a rate is set and prior to use of the solid waste management facilities / convenience centers operated by the Wythe County Board's contractors. The fee / fees and method of billing shall be set annually by the Board of Supervisors. The board shall set the billing frequency and method as the board seems appropriate. And then there was an item 3. Strike it in its entirety. And I would suggest that that either be referred to committee with that revised language or adopt the ordinance as revision is presented. So the board's pleasure.
If we send this back to committee, which committee will we send it back to?
I would say the budget committee, since it deals with money.
You've heard Mr. Dalton's explanation of the ordinance. Any board member have any questions or recommendations?
Let me ask you, send it back to committee for what? For
To review this alternative language.
okay, the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I think that's your 2 options at this point in time.
So since the revenue is taken out, it's not, we don't have to do it before we vote? Okay.
Is it consensus of the board to send it back to the budget committee for review. Okay, we'll send it back to the budget committee for review. Next item on the agenda is the Wythe County Ordinance 96.4, Water Usage and Management Amendment Number 3.
Chairman, I move that we adopt this ordinance. It's, about adjustments to water bills for leaks. We did, make, a little bit of a change in there, that, leaks that are not immediately visible may be approved by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors. So that, I think that covers the, the big change that we talked about, but I would move for adoption.
I'll second the motion.
Have a motion and to adopt the ordinance and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Dalton, does this also include the rate increase, or
No,
is
sir,
that?
it does not.
Okay.
Just the adjustment in
Hearing no discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horning?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Ordinance passes 7-0. Okay, moving on with the agenda, the adoption of the proposed tax rate for calendar year 2014. You have them in front of you. Real estate, current .44, proposed .44, personal property 2.227. Proposed is still 227. Machine, merchant's capital is .56, and proposed is still .56, and machine and tool is 150, and proposed is 150. So there's nothing changed. Can I have a motion to adopt the proposed tax rates for calendar year 2014?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Hausman?
I'll vote yes.
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 And the chair votes yes. Adopt the tax rate as posted. Okay, proposed water rates. Next item on the agenda. Okay, you have the proposed water rates. I'll find it here. Okay, the proposed water rates, current rate for the first 1,000 gallons is 11. Proposed water rate will go up to $18 per first 1,000 gallons, and then $9 per 1,000 gallons after, and that's what the current rate is, and that's what the proposed rate is for anything over 1,000 gallons for the next 1,000 gallons. I have a motion.
Can you discuss it a bit before a motion?
Well, we need to have a motion and a second, then we can go into discussion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed water rates as presented.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Hill?
Yes, it, based partly on the public hearing and based on the comments that I've had from users, I'd like you to consider an amendment that the water rate on the first be changed to 2,000 gallons and stick with the $18, but let that cover 2,000 gallons. I don't think that that would affect the county cost-wise very much because it don't cost that much to process 1,000 gallons of water. And it might help some of those very people that we heard about that just barely get over. Now, Mr. Dalton, that's the way it works. If you go over the 1,000 gallons, say 100 gallons or 200 gallons, you are getting kicked the next $9.
No, sir.
It's just on what you use.
Exactly, based off, after the minimum bill, if you use 1,100 gallons, then it's 1,100 gallons. 1/10 of $9, so it's $11.90.
Okay. I'd still like to offer that amendment. I think it's fair and it justifies this large jump in fee with little cost to the water department.
Any other board member have anything to add?
Are you making that as a form of motion, Joe?
I asked for an amendment, yeah.
So you amended the original motion.
Now, do we have to have a second before discussion?
Who made the original?
I made the original motion. I mean, if you've got some more discussion.
Let's have a
Let's have discussion instead of just
before we
amend it.
amend it.
The only thing is, actually, by increasing to 2,000 gallons, we've actually made the water cheaper, have we not? Because right now, if you have a minimum payment of 11 for 1,000 gallons, and then $9 for the next 1,000 gallons, that's 20,000 for,
$20.
$20 for 2,000 gallons. And what this does actually decrease that rate, $2 for 2,000 gallons. Of course, you all know I was opposed to the to the rate just simply because I thought that the rate was it was a pretty big jump, but I also don't want us to go down, and the people that will end up paying more are the ones that have the meter but are not connected, because they will be paying $18 for just minimum fee. Again, it to me it makes more sense. To me, I would think that we would go, if we left it at 1,000 gallons, go to like something like $15 for the rate, and then for the people who actually use it to raise it a little bit. And Mr. Hill, I know that you were talking about Gatorade and Pepsi, but my understanding, we don't sell water to Gatorade and Pepsi. That's the town of Wythe, so we don't have any real high. Do we have very many high volume corporate users?
Yep.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
a couple of million-gallon-a-month users out there.
And this, I don't really see how this affects them, Mr. Hausman. This is on the residential.
Right.
And it really don't affect the revenue. This is just to make it more palatable, and that you're adding some benefit because of this large increase that the public hearing brought out. But what we're really after is the revenue, not the method.
But we need the revenue to offset the cost of providing water to the users, correct? That's what's spurning the increase.
Yeah, I guess just doing quick math, and sometimes that gets me in pretty deep trouble. You've got about 800 customers that currently are just paying the minimum bill, which means they're using less than 1,000 gallons. 400 and some are just paying the minimum bill without using the water. The issue, I guess, all along is having that base rate set that covers your debt service, which takes, the debt service is about $14 and something for every customer to cover that bottom line. And then, so that everybody's paying something on the debt service, and then there's the cost of billing, et cetera. But just doing quick math, if there's 2,200, if we have 3,000 customers, say it's 2,200 people using above that 1,000, and give them another 1,000, that's $9 times 2,200, which is about $19,800 a month, which is over $200,000 a year less revenue you get. I think that was the point you was trying to make, Gary. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Right, yeah, for the people who actually use the water, we would be decreasing the rate.
Yeah.
If you went with the $18, but
yeah, 18
if you raised it to 20 for 2,000, then you wouldn't be losing any money there.
That's true.
But then you'll have a lot of feedback from those customers, well, that are non-customers, that have been forced to to pay the minimum bill each month. And that was one reason that I had mentioned maybe even increasing by 50 cents per 1,000 gallons, just simply because that way the people that actually use the product would help pay for it. That was my original suggestion was like maybe raise it to the $15 per 1,000 gallons, and then the rate per 1,000 gallons to like $9.50. And there may be fallacies in that. I don't know.
The only issue is that the guy that doesn't use the water is still getting the fire protection and getting the same benefits as the guy that uses the water. There's a huge benefit to the fire protection. Actually, the fire protection extends beyond the people that have a fire hydrant, because some of the rural fire departments are using some of those convenient hydrants to fill their trucks up, or pumper trucks, and haul it to some of the fires.
And we may need to do a better job of letting people know that too. Because most people just think of it that they're forced to have the water, and they're not thinking about the fire protection.
Yeah, and they're getting their brakes on their insurance and stuff too, because they have fire hydrants now. Most people are getting brakes on their homeowner's insurance.
You know, sort of an interesting fact about almost every insurance agency gives you a break based off your closeness to fire hydrant. But we have found that there's one or two insurance companies out there that do not do that they don't factor that in.
Well, mine does, and my wife was questioning my insurance agent the other day as why our insurance has got so low, so I don't know what her complaint was.
Can I have the name of your insurance agent?
I'll give it to you later, but it has, our insurance has dropped. But we have a motion, Mr. Hall made the motion, and Mr. Hill made a motion to amend the motion. I'll go back to Mr. Hall.
Well, I made the motion to get it on the floor, and I think I probably have I guess we probably have the least amount of constituents affected, because most of our constituents are in town. I don't feel comfortable amending it. I can withdraw it if somebody else wanted to put a motion out there, or we can vote on the motion as presented and move from there. So I guess I don't, if somebody calls for the question, we'll vote on it. And if not,
Well, I'll call for the question, let's.
I got a question before we do that. You said roughly we've got 3,000 customers, and roughly 800 of them are minimum bills. So that leaves you about 2,200. If they were all 2,000 gallon users, you're basically going to lose $2 on every bill.
Yeah, 19,800 bucks.
That ain't what I came up with, because I came up with a total for the year of 52,800.
Well, if you, $9 a thousand.
But you're only losing $2 of that $9. Because you're still,
Yeah, but you're losing the debt service portion of it too. There, I mean, you gotta have the whole 9 currently.
but you're getting $7 of it because you went to $18. You're still charging them 18 instead of 11.
Yeah, but the issue, I guess, Gene, is the 18 for one, the huge portion of it is the understanding that you got that many people that are not using it. And you're getting the debt service paid for all those. So the first, for those bigger users, that first 1,000 gallon is a little cheaper. But if you move it up 1,000, each one of those 2,200 people or customers, you're not getting that $9.
But you're getting 7 of it, right?
But you're losing 9 on the next 1,000.
Yeah.
Net
I
negative
think
2.
you all are figuring
How are you-
different. I
how are
think
you
you're figuring on
losing now?
1,000 and you're thinking about 2,000.
if somebody uses exactly 2,000 gallons.
Right.
They'll pay, under what's been on the floor, they'll pay $27. If we amend it to the 2,000, they'll pay $18.
Yeah, okay.
So you lose
So
that.
that's what you're looking at.
If somebody
that
used
way.
exactly
Okay.
2,000 gallons.
I was looking at it as compared to what we're doing now, not
Yeah.
comparing the two
All I'm trying to get,
different amendments.
Everybody that
where we're
uses
trying to get
2,000
to
or
is
more.
paying the total people in
All we need is your address.
the 470 Century Court. I already get a water bill from you guys.
Okay, we have a call for the question.
There.
I'll do
Would you restate the motion so we'll know, is it voting on the original?
voting
Yeah, I
on,
didn't
voting
make
on the
any
original
amendments.
motion that current rate for the minimum will move from 11 to 18 and $9 per 1,000 gallons after would remain the same. Do a roll call.
Can I say something like this? I should have said it a little earlier, I guess. Probably so down in my end of the county is probably one that I'm looking at. They 75 to 100 families. I ain't talking about no 75 to 100 people. I'm talking about 75 to 100 families. When Miss Arnold come in here, and she lived right in the middle of it, and she said, you know, I don't need no water. But for me to pay $18 a month for my neighbors to get that water, I don't think I should save anything without paying $18.
Okay, we have had the question called for, so I'm going to do a roll call vote. Dr. Hausman?
Let me say, I understand the need for increase. I think it's a little bit too much, so I'm gonna vote no.
Yes.
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 No.
And the chair votes yes. Motion passes 5-2. Okay, moving on to other. Mr. Dalton, do we have any other
No, sir.
thing?
I do not, unless the board members have something.
I'll bring that up. Okay, we move into reports. Treasurer's report, Mr. Sam Crockett.
Morning, gentlemen.
Sam.
Morning.
You got
Morning,
two.
Sam.
You got two in here, the May 30th one and the one I got you to print for me last week.
Well, I got a different one than you do. I printed one Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I
So
love this
we'll see how that
governmental
works.
accounting.
Do what?
I said, I love this governmental accounting. We got,
Pick a day any day.
Yeah, pick a day, that's right.
It changes on any time, any minute of the day.
On our consolidated account report, she didn't give you a different one of those, did she? No, you just
No.
asked for revenue. All right. Consolidated account report, we got $50,148,607 in the consolidated accounts. On our end of the year, our general fund balance is at $31,056,000. So we're ending the year in pretty good shape as far as our general fund goes. And as far as our revenue statement goes, whichever one y'all got you're looking at, I'm not sure, but the one I did on Friday, we've collected $18,280,226, which is about $479,000 above our budget from last year that we used, which is about 3%, about 103%. It's down from last year. Last year at this time, we had collected $1,172,000. I think the economy is the big part of that. And the reason I say that, usually at the end of the year, we printed something like 30,000 receipts where we processed payments. As of this morning, I did a receipt for a lady, and it was number 50,401. So we've increased the number of receipts by about 20,000 this year, and it's because I think the biggest part is all the partial payments we're doing. We try to work with people to let them make partial payments, and we have tons of people paying prepayment on their taxes, which we process too. But that doesn't count as a receipt because we work all them at one time. But we get hundreds of checks throughout the year for prepaid taxes, and people appreciate that, I think. They like what we're doing with that. But the partial payments, I really consider the economy as a big issue, and that's why we've got an increase of about 20,000 receipts this year where we've been doing partial. Plus, we have those judicial sale payments going on too, where we have contracts with I think we had about 80 people on contract locally, and the attorneys have a bunch on contract too that are making payments monthly on their real estate to get that caught up. We still have only got about 10 or 12 right now that John's talking about having a judicial sale on. And I don't know what the status of the others are. It's been like finding hen's teeth this year trying to get anything out of them. But it's slow turning, like a cat eating a grindstone. Eventually we may get there. So has anybody got any questions about revenues or anything for the collections or anything?
I have one question, Sam. Our current personal property taxes were up, it's 102%, we're up 95,000. But down here, the motor vehicle license, we budgeted 400 and we've not collected but 2%, or 391,000. What is that?
That's we've collected $363,000 of the $20 fees and the $8,870 above it on your revenue statement on line item 120501. That's when we were still selling decals for a portion of the year. But out of the $400,000 we projected for the $20 fees, we still have a lot of $20 fees hanging out there.
Well, I want to ask you, it's on their personal property tax. How can, if people's coming in paying their personal property, you're just not letting them say you don't have to pay your $20?
We collect that fee first.
First?
We collect that first because we don't have penalty and interest on it. People aren't paying. That's a problem.
They're not paying their personal property altogether?
Yeah, we've sent out over 3,700 delinquent notices the other week. We finally got our DMV stops going, and I got a sheet here, I'll pass out to Kyle for that. The little summary sheet that David worked up on the DMV stop.
Yes, sir.
But
Take one
we
back,
have
back, just like
a
this.
bunch of people that only had that $20 fee for taxes. The previous year, we had over 4,000 vehicles that were not taxed, and it was paid by PPTRA. But this year, we sent out those $20 fees, they're not paying them. You know, that's just the way it is. They're not coming in and paying that $20 fee. And so on this DMV stop, we had David worked this up in his good sheet. We finally got that done, and it went online last week. We sent 3,357 vehicles to DMV, and out of that, 227 vehicles were less than $20, and then 22,034 vehicle license fees were exported to personal property. And it's a total of 5,600 items. But down, the ones that we got on DMV with no errors, down in the middle of the page, is 1,130 vehicles. Those are the ones that were approved by DMV.
And that's all registered vehicles.
Those are registered vehicles. Now, if you look down at those other numbers, there's 2,227 that didn't go on DMV because of DMV stops were already on from other jurisdictions. And I didn't know what happened, but we had 2 calls this week, or last week. A guy was in North Carolina trying to buy a car, and they called it up, the dealership did, and there was a DMV stop. And they said, well, it's Wythe County. Well, he called me. It wasn't us. So we hung up, and we got one of Faye's girls come over because they can get into parts of DMV I can't get into. And we asked him if he had anybody else on his car, and he just said no. Well, he did. It was his boyfriend. And I guess he wanted to keep that a secret. But he had a DMV stop from 2 years ago in Russell County. And it showed up on our vehicle here in Wythe County then. And then another one was in Buchanan County. So other DMV stops from other counties are popping up. But we had 286, the ones we tried to turn in already had stops on them. And I don't know who put it on there because we didn't. Then 337 stops weren't allowed because they were permanent registrations. That's our trailers, which, you know, people have trailers with permanent tags on them. They're not allowed to. I mean, we sent the information, but they didn't allow them because it was a permanent trailer. 227, the registration expired. I guess people have sold the cars or whatever, their tags had run out, so they couldn't put DMV stops on those. 382 didn't have a registrations. They weren't registered. 933, there was no active vehicle found. That's what kind of blows our mind, because all the information that we sent them was their information. We just sent it back to them, but now they can't find it. So out of the DMV stops, about a third of the ones we did went on. 1,130 went on out of 3,300 and some. So they're out there, and it's getting some people's attention now. We'll see how it works. I think part of the problem, it's late in the year. The information's 18 months old. We need to do them earlier. Now that we have the programs finally ready to go, we had delays getting that done. Next year, we're going to do it end of January, 1st of February, and I think you'll have a better success in doing them that early. We talked about it because people are tuned in to paying their taxes, getting their decals at April 15th on the deadline day for the county decals. And we thought, well, we'll wait till after that time period. That's when people normally pay, but they didn't happen. And then that delayed the start of it partly too. But we just got the program online and running last week. But, so next year, David and I talked about it, we're gonna do them probably around the 1st of February, and we should have better success with them, getting them on.
Have you sent 2 notices out or just one?
I sent one notice, but I had on the notice that it would be DMV stops on it. Yeah, we have to advertise that. On the bottom of our delinquent notices, it has all that information on there. We do have to advertise it. So they're out there, and we've had a couple people come in with it. But overall, we do have delinquencies this year. Still got a lot of money out there, but our collections have been fair. We still exceeded our budget by about $400,000, $429,000. But we'll just have to keep working on the collections. Hopefully that judicial sales will eventually happen here pretty soon. Get that done. Anybody else got any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
I've got 2, Sam.
Huh?
2, not on this, but all the, it seems like every week I send you a handful of foreclosures. Is that, when those banks foreclose, is it easier to collect from those foreclosures?
Yeah, the banks have to do that. They have to do title work and collect on that. As long as it's, not an LLC. I just got into a big hassle with some lawyers over that this week. We had a personal property that owes us a bunch of money, and we were trying to work with him. Turned out he was just lying to us all along, I guess. But he sold real estate, but it was in a different LLC name than the personal property was. So I'm fighting with some attorneys in Abington right now about trying to see what we do to collect that stuff. But those foreclosures, that's, the bank's doing it, and, they have to pay the delinquent real estate tax on that. They do their due diligence on that.
Okay. And lastly, I guess the gentleman that made the presentation, did y'all talk? Is there any potential with his company for collection?
Well, not right now due to the fact that, well, I don't know about the personal property because it's private information. We can't give that information to anybody. Real estate, we have a judicial sale going on right now. We got to finish up what we're doing with the judicial sale. Since we've turned everything over to John, we need to complete that before we do anything. I thought maybe y'all were talking more about water bills for that type of stuff.
I think the whole gamut is what we were hoping. But,
I got to find out the legalities of water bills. Do you know what they is, Mark? Not water bills, of personal property taxes?
I don't know anything unique about Virginia personal property taxes.
Well, it's private information. We cannot give you, we can't tell anybody what kind of car you drive. I can tell you how much tax you owe, but not in the cars. Whether you try to do distresses on cars, which we can do things like that, but I don't know if you can do anything like that to collect the money. I mean, we have certain tools that are used.
Well, I think we should look at what information needs to go in the collection notices and whether that crosses that line or not. Because, for instance, we're a HIPAA-covered entity to do all the ambulance and medical and so forth. That's a very heavily regulated personal privacy issue, but our letters and our phone calls don't cross that line because they only give certain information. So I think there's work, we can explore that. I think there's a doable way to go.
Yeah. I don't know.
because
And we had-
243,000, if we can collect half of it, it's a pretty substantial amount of money.
Well, that's half of it's what's on those DMV stops. 131,000 down there at the bottom is on DMV stops right now. That's what y'all wanted to do, so that's what we're trying to do. So we'll see how they work out. They've been interesting so far with the problems we've had with them. But we'll see how it works out.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Sam. Okay, moving on with the agenda. Sheriff Doug King. You have anything to report, Sheriff Key?
Basically the same topic, two different facets to it. So far this year, which we've had some problems, I'll address that in a moment. We've collected 121,000 pounds plus of trash, but we are having problems with the vehicle, which has really cut back on our collection. We got an electrical problem in the van now. Lights won't work when you're sitting still, but you hit 35 miles an hour and the lights turn off. And they'll stay on for a little while, and they pick up trash while they can, then the lights go off, and it's such a safety issue that we have to stop.
I am working on that with District 3. Mr. Guy sent me back an email, and I sent to Mr. Dalton. They're gonna have a van coming up here pretty soon for.
That'd be
to
good.
save.
We could raise that total considerably, considering the days we've missed because of mechanical issues. So if we could get a van that'll start and the lights work on it every time, we'll see those totals go up. We'll be able to hit more roads. And I get calls weekly on the popularity of this program that Mr. Hale and Mr. Dalton worked on with me. People like to see it. They like to see prisoners working to start with, but they also like the end result of seeing cleaner roads. So it's a very positive program, and any speed that you can give us for getting a new van would certainly help out.
Well, it's popular because I see now that people that litter actually pile it in piles on the side.
It'd be a little bit neater.
Makes it easier to pick up, I guess. But, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's pretty bad when you have a convicted felon pondering how messy the people are throwing out so much trash.
I know. Mr. Hale has a comment.
Couple of things. Could you get Mr. Dunnigan to talk to Arlen? Arlen says he has the very package we've been looking for. To take in.
Educational package?
Yeah, educational package to take, and then maybe we get something rolling with the schools and K through 3 or whatever y'all think's appropriate. That's one. Arlen says he has those packages.
Okay, I'll get the two of them
The
together.
dogs are not reading them or eating them, so let's get them where they'll do some good.
Okay.
The other thing, I was going to bring this up later to the board, but since you're the guy here that has money, I think we need to put out some bumper stickers that says trash litters. That's a little bit of a brain teaser, but some people will figure it out. I don't know whether you read the local paper, but there was a good article in there about recycling. But the whole thing needs to be more than just pick it up, because as you know, the reroutes are happening now to keep them clean.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's time we start some kind of program to reduce the amount of trash that's being thrown out.
For the most part, our greatest problem areas are feeder roads to recycling centers.
Yep.
For the most part. Of course, you're also always going to have the back roads where people that, for one reason or another, just don't feel like going by and dumping it at a recycling center. They'll pile up trash there, but our greatest problems really are roads going to recycling centers. And blown out trash is a big problem.
Well, my neighbors talk about the trucks that go out there, but they go out of Wythe County and go into the National Forest in Pulaski County to dump truckloads on that road that goes across the mountain to Gatewood.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys stop, we know where the county line is, and so do the trash dumpers.
Yeah.
Arlen also had made an arrest on one of your cameras. I think we need to publicize that. And what the penalty was, it was pretty stiff.
It should.
And that word needs to get out, I think, that if we get a conviction, the judge is going to take it serious. I didn't know about it until I was talking to him about another matter. But I wish we wouldn't scoff and laugh at this bumper sticker, because if you just get people to think about it, maybe it'll keep some of it from getting thrown out.
I have some contacts through the couple of national literature providers, and I'll see if they have anything in that category.
Well, where do you go to get a bumper sticker?
Generally, you go to a local vendor, and they will print bumper stickers for you. If I'm not mistaken, Duke's Printing has an outlet for that. I'm not certain of the cost.
I'll check
All
on
I've bought are election stickers, and they cost more.
They cost a lot more, don't they?
But, as far as a public service type announcement on a bumper sticker, I've never explored that.
Okay. We'll get some prices and talk about it.
Let me
again.
check, if you don't mind, let me check and see if these people that solicit funds from Wythe County residents for the production of materials, educational materials, let me check with them and see if they have anything, which they would provide to us for free, because, once again, they are already soliciting funds here for educational materials. National Child Safety Council being one of them. And see if they have a littering program in their package. I can check that first.
Okay, thank
And
you.
if we can do it that way, it won't cost us anything.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is go to a civic organization and see if they'll pay for the stickers. I was just picking on you about your activity money, but I know it's awful hard to get you to spend any of it. So.
That's very true. I'm tight because I have to be tight.
Does any other board member have anything for the sheriff? Any questions, comments, praises? We praise.
Oh, let me mention one more thing. We did have the New River Jail trash crews out 2 weeks ago, and they were able to pick up some of the slack. The deputy that I have assigned for that program coordinated with their coordinator to hit the areas that he hadn't been able to touch.
Well, we'll try to get you back up and running as soon as possible.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, next reports, Commissioner of Revenue, Faye Baker. Barker, I mean. I'm sorry. I just talk before I look and read.
Good morning. The only thing I have to report is that on the titled vehicles, Janet Williams with DNV, she's been working on it and was working with her IT people, but we still have not been able to get a download from them, and they still have not been able to give us a price of what that download is going to be. And they've been working on it for like 2 months now and still have not been able to get it, so I don't know. I don't know when that's going to happen.
I just don't understand. How's these other counties that does this, how they
Well,
get a download?
I've talked to Grayson County, I've talked to Tazewell, I've talked to several of the surrounding counties, and they have always had those vehicles on their list. They don't download them. They've always had them on their list, and they never drop a vehicle off unless somebody comes in and says, hey, this vehicle's gone. Even though it never comes up on DMV anymore, they never drop them off, so they don't have downloads.
How did they get them to begin with?
It's just the vehicles that they've carried for forever. And see, because DMV drops off anything that's after 3 years, you know, if you don't register them, they drop those off. And so they just keep them on their records forever, and so it's not anything that they've ever downloaded.
So they've built up a file over
over
time
the years.
of all the registered.
And so that we don't have that file.
Okay.
So
And who in DMV you're working with?
Janet Williams, she's the director of this part of the DMV. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Faye?
So, are you saying you're gonna start a list if you can't
Well,
get this?
that's the only thing we can do at this point.
And that'll be ones that are at least within 3 years they've been
Mhm.
registered and hired.
So,
Thank you, Faye.
okay.
Next report is School Superintendent, Dr. Lee Brennan. Good morning, Dr. Brennan.
Got here just in time, didn't I? Just in time. First of all, board members, I know each and every one of you have a very difficult position, and it's difficult to do sometimes, but, you know, we're still one of your biggest needs, and I don't want you to forget that. There's still Phase 2 construction items that are sitting out there at Scott and Spiller. The VRS is an issue for us this year. We've made a request to you all for that. It continues to be a need. We balance it and just cut wherever we need to cut to make the payments. The VRS is going to be another issue in 2 more years. It's not just this biennium, it's the next biennium as well. And additional revenues are needed by the school system to provide for these services through the VRS, increasing health insurance costs in the future. You're going to see kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, 3rd grade right up against the maximum enrollment numbers. And that's what's happened over the last, not just this year, but over the last 4 to 5 years. And additional revenue is needed. And I ask you, whatever avenues that you all need to do to provide these services for these renovation projects, for VRS increases, health insurance increases for our employees. We have not given a raise, did not give a raise this year in the approved budget. Do not know what you all are planning on doing. So the needs are always there. And we just ask that as you plan, both this year and in the future, that you continue to look at those needs and not just discount the school system as well. They'll make it do. He's cut before. He's cut out before and been able to make it when he needed $600,000, only received $300,000. Well, it's getting to the points that where those cuts without additional revenue are going to have deep impact. So, as always, I thank you for everything that you all do for this county. To sit in this public office, to represent all the people with county. I feel the same way, and if there are any additional revenues to come forth, then we could definitely use them to offset the VRS increase. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate you always listening to me. I try to keep you all updated on everything that comes about, and I want to be as transparent as possible, but I can't be transparent if you don't ask me the question that you need to ask. I would just prefer you come and see me if you have a question about something that's bothering you, or if you see something that you don't feel like is right or don't understand how it's going. I promise you, I'll sit right down with you wherever you want to meet at and disclose anything you want to know about the way we operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Brennan. Hold on just a
Dr.
second.
Brennan?
I'm sorry.
Questions?
Friday, or Thursday, well, I guess it was Friday, in our budget meeting, we talked a little bit about looking to the future and having a 5-year budget. Is that something that the school board or you could put together? Obviously, $44-some million is
Right.
a huge portion of our, or almost all of our local revenue.
Yeah.
Is that something that we could get put together so that our budget committee, we're just adopting a budget? And I think we've heard about the no raises and the cuts. But if we could get that so that the board could look at a financial projection of what it takes in funding to get us to some point, we'd be very much appreciative. And I think would be a great planning tool for us to do that.
I agree. Mr. Dalton and board members, I can do that. And I think I could use current trends that we're looking at in health insurance, not just for this year, but in the future. We pretty much know what the board recommended to the General Assembly for the full VRS increase, so I would think that we're looking at increments in that over the next 5 years, over the next 2 bienniums. And I'll be honest, we'll try to hold everything else, within reason. And, but also project on what each percent of raise that we might be able to look at, what that cost would be each year over the next 5-year period. Be glad to.
May I ask one question?
Yes, Dr. House.
Dr. Brown, with any carryover money that you have or whatever, to fund the VRS increase, what would be the minimum amount?
What I'm planning on doing is taking fixed expense costs like buses, things that we purchase one time, and funding the VRS that's within our appropriation, not using carryover money for that. Then the carryover money would then replace those things I had to cut out of the appropriated budget. We're looking right now of asking for a carryover of $94,000 is what's in our latest figure. We had a wrong entry on Friday that we got corrected of additional revenue that we'd received from a grant. But I would think somewhere in that 95 to 100,000.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, Dr. Brennan, I want to say thank you to, working with us and all you do for the schools. I think you're a terrific superintendent. I know you've had a hard job, in this tight budget season, and, we've all worked just as hard as we can to, and I think schools is one of the most important things that we have, that we can give our children a good education. And I promise that I will work hard and to make sure that the funding is there for the schools.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Dr. Brandon. Before we continue on with the agenda, I've had a couple of requests for recess, so let's take about a 10-minute recess. We'll continue with the agenda. Next report, Finance Director Bruce Grant.
Good morning. I'm here to talk about financial report for the month of May. Take a look at that. The first page, and this is something that I've been putting together, and I wanted to kind of go through it and introduce what's in it that may be beneficial to everybody. First page is a map that shows the various years and the monthly ending cash balance of our general fund. This being May, the big blue line up at the top area that goes across shows 2014, which is in pretty good shape. It's around 31 million or so. If you look at June, the next month where there is no mark, and you draw an arrow down from the top down near that dotted line, that's where we're going to be at the end of this month. The dotted line there represents 3 months reserves at about $22 million. Our fund balance policy will have me probably, or Mr. Dalton, coming to you soon and saying that we have hit the trigger that our fund balance policy says that we have to alert the board to. But you can see that there's a pattern to the cash each year. We draw down until about October from their year, and then we build up in December as tax revenue starts coming in. So we basically have 3 levels. We have the build up in October to December, which slants up and we're gaining cash. And the period of January through April or May, typically we're along a plateau. It is fairly level, and then in June through September, we're drawing down on that cash because the revenues that are coming in are not matching the expenses that we're paying.
Mr. Grant, may I ask, why such a sharp decrease this year? I mean, I know It goes back, it's very similar to 2012, but why such a sharp decrease from May to June? Is it just paying bills that were unpaid, or?
The school comes in for June at 8.9 million, and that drops it down. That's substantially higher than they have on any particular month.
Okay.
But it also includes, in all fairness to the schools, the payroll for July and August.
So that's summer payroll.
So that's summer payroll, and those, each payroll is over $1 million apiece. But you can typically see end-of-year drawdowns on things of that nature. The next page, 2 pages, shows the cash balance of funds and kind of groups them together. This is similar to what you look at on Sam's trial balance, except it's a little bit differently organized and grouped into various groups. But you can see the general fund there is 31 million at the end of May. And the next 2 pages shows what we have and what it's for. Moving on from there is a expenditure summary report. It's 3 pages that lists by department the budget, the year-to-date expenditures, what % of that budget was spent, and the balance remaining in their particular department for the fiscal year. Beyond that, we have a sideways glance of a revenue summary report. And this summarizes by fund the revenue that we've gotten year to date. And it also summarizes it between the local, state, and federal budget. For example, in this through May, our revenues totaled $73 million. Of that $73 million, $38,500,000 is from local year-to-date revenues, 27 million from state, and 7.6 from the federal. Underneath that, you're going to see a percentage, and what that percentage is the 80% is 80% of the revenue budget has been collected in 11 months. 71% of the local revenue of the local budget has been collected, and so forth. 86% of the state budget has been collected. So this is kind of a big picture where you are with the budget at any given month. The following pages are the detailed by account revenue report for the month of May and year to date, and they are arranged by fund and account number so that you can go through and fairly easily determine where your money's coming from in the general fund or the water fund or the wastewater fund, et cetera.
And one other question, Mr. Grant, maybe I probably should know this, and as soon as you tell me, I probably will, but where it says local BGT, what's BGT stand for?
I'm sorry, that's budget.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So it's just.
I get column conscious, and so I'll put budget, I don't.
Okay.
Yes,
I
BGT is budget, YTD is year to
Year to date,
date.
I understood, yeah. Okay.
A lot of this I program to automatically move around, and so by always using BGT for budget, I know in any of my programs that stands for budget and where it's coming from. So I apologize, it's
Oh, no, I just.
not proper English. The revenue report, though, grinds on for about 7 pages through each fund, what the budget is and what we've gotten, and whether it's a local revenue, a state revenue, or a federal revenue. Moving on, there's a sheet that looks like this, which looks at the county's involvement with the school system. up in the top section, we list out the local, state, and federal revenues that the school has gotten for the year to date. And below that, the expenses are grouped out by budget items. The important number on this is shaded in brown. It's under year-to-date revenues, the county contribution, $15,818,000. That's 70% of our budget of $22 million. So this is a good way to be able to see what the contribution of the county is, because on the books, it's not directly reflected. It's always a difference between revenues and expenses, and you have to kind of go to it. There's not a place in the accounting world where you just say, what is the contribution year to date to the schools? This form has a way of calculating that and shows where you are in the budget. The next page does the same process for the social services department. It shows the county contribution through May was $1.12 million a year to date, or 63% of their budget. On the next page, it begins with a graph on a page, and this little section is fun with graphs. It shows from 2009 to 2014 monthly collection of occupancy taxes. You know, visually, it becomes very quick to see if something falls out of line, if you can recognize that these things follow a pattern every year. You can see July, August, and September are high months for collection because that's when a lot of the tourism happens. This is 1 month behind because you're reporting in the month that was collected for the previous month. So where you see July over here in the left-hand corner, that's really collections for June that were processed in June, paid in July. So we track the occupancy taxes. On the next page, we look at the monthly collection of meals taxes. And on the following page, the local sales and use taxes. And up in the upper section of each of these is a month by month, year by year total of collections plus the budget for that year. So it's a good tool. If your revenues are not coming in according to your budget, that's something that you want to raise a flag on real fast in the fiscal year. The next page is a page that is landscaped, looks kind of like this. This tracks the budget amendments that the board has made throughout the year. The date of the meeting, the accounting month that the amendment was made, what department, what the purpose of the budget amendment was, how much was appropriated, and the accounts involved. And this is just a good way to make sure that things did get on the books that we thought got on the books. Somebody will come to me and say, didn't we make a change for that a couple months ago? And it's easy to look it up on the list. And if it's not on there, then maybe we've missed something or need to take action. The final 2 pages show graphs, large-scale graphs of the water and the wastewater fund. Now, the wastewater fund is rather well behaved. It's just kind of a trendy thing, but I want to spend a moment on the water fund balance, which looks a little bit all over the place. And the reason for that, we have in the past had several water activities occurring in the general fund related mainly to the construction process and also the New River obligations with that. So what would happen is that the money that is spent on your bond projects would be paid out of the general fund. But the reimbursement of the money from the bond issue would come into here. So money would build up, and then somebody needed to transfer it to the other account. So that's why you see these great big changes here. And you can see in the last year, we're getting a bit more normal of tracking that. As we go forward in the new year, we will not have this problem. The areas for the capital usage is in a different area, and it is under the water fund itself, so there won't be this up and down jerky motion as we go forward.
May I ask, you're talking about the capital funds that we use for like the New River Regional Water. We're still helping to pay for that?
Yes, sir.
And that has been coming from general fund or from a water fund?
It's been set up budget-wise over the historical years in the general fund. And so the water fund has to pay back the general fund for that. If I don't do it, the auditors will do it. And so the effect of when you pay back the general fund shows a decrease in the water fund balance. And as we go forward, those accounts have been moved in this budget so that they are within the water group. And so you will not have this transfer back and forth as we go forward. Any questions? Thank you.
Anybody have any? Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, we're going to continue with the reports. County Administrator report, Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item is a letter from Jennifer DeBrule from the Virginia Department of Transportation. She's and a copy of the Bristol District revenue sharing matching programs that they are proposing to fund in next year's budget. And it includes $5 million for Peppers Ferry Road or relocation. That is not in this year's or fiscal year 15's budget, but will be in fiscal year 16 budget. Our current $1 million allocation will not be finished until August of 2015. The next item is an informational item. We've been ongoing a process of when we had a fuel, or Lead Mines Estates had a fuel oil spill into their wastewater treatment plant, trying to, or attempting to get reimbursement from Lead Mines Estate. This is notification they have changed officers. And they are still working with Mr. Division Environmental, Mr. Art Davis, on recovering that. Next item is a letter from Mr. Jackson concerning Grandview Farms, requesting that that subdivision plat be vacated. There is a specific process to do that, and public notice is required. Our currently board policy is that we require payment for that right-of-way that is abandoned, and we will, this matter, I would request be referred to the Budget Committee so that we can come up with an amount and send it to them.
Okay.
And the last item is a memorandum requesting that our current capital projects fund, which has $6,303,651 in it, be split into two portions, one capital projects fund and the other capital projects utility. And that will address the coming and goings of the water and wastewater monies that we each year get docked on in our audit.
And this will take care of that problem, separating them.
Yes.
Do we need,
Board, only the board can do that. It takes board action to set up that fund and separate those.
I'll make the motion that we accept this.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to split the construction fund into two different funding codes, one for capital project fund, one for capital project utilities. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, we'll go into the Board of Supervisors report. We'll start with Dr. Housen, Blacklift District.
I don't have anything.
East Whipple. West Whipple.
Nothing.
Fort Chiswell.
Don't have anything.
Lead Mines, Speeble.
The only thing I was gonna say is Linda brought up the Rural Retreat Fair Association thing. As a member of the Glade Mountain Saddle Club, I've been talking to them, and I think that there's some changes that's gonna happen on their own there. So I don't think the board really needs to get involved right now. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
Okay, can you keep us updated on that?
I will. What about Mr. King?
You brought up last time, you want to update on where we're at?
You can, because I read the report and I still ain't figured out what they're doing. So let's go get your report on the farm over on.
Mr. Randolph King and Gene brought it up last time and had an issue with runoff from the adjoining property. We contacted D&Q and Virginia Department of Agriculture. They did an inspection out there. We had asked them to contact Mr. King, which they did not do, to go look at Mr. King's property. They have determined there's not any runoff from the farming operation on Mr. King's property. They didn't cite him for anything. So based off that inspection, is now Mr. King's only alternative is a civil matter between him and his adjoining property.
So when DEQ don't find any violations, they're in pretty good shape.
No, it just means DEQ didn't go out there and look at anything.
They didn't?
Well, they came, but they didn't. Mr. King, we had asked specifically that he go to Mr. King's property and look at Mr. King's pond of where the material was being washed to, and they didn't extend their investigation to an off-site.
Anything else, Gene?
No.
No. I have nothing at large. I done took care of mine with Mr. Russell this morning. Moving on to new business, we have the consent calendar.
Make a motion, we accept the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent calendar. Is any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Housen?
Aye.
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 Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion passed 7-0. Moving along to fiscal year 14 year-end and carryover report, Mr. Dalton.
You have before you the year-end expenditures and carryover report from FY 14 to 15. between local dollars and state dollars and federal dollars, there's $6 million and $6,026,828 that are unspent and need to be de-appropriated, if that's the proper word. And on the general fund and local, the carryovers is a little bit over $7 million plus a $7,470,722 and $1,745,000 for capital projects that need to be carried over. And we ended up with a total expenditure of last year of $76,397,847. And we were late Friday trying to get the school board's numbers correct. And I hope they're correct. I'd ask you to adopt that and take the appropriate actions of amending and appropriating and carrying over those three items.
What page are you on? I'm trying to.
I'm on page, at the end of it, page 130 of 338.
Well, I will make a motion that we accept the carryover report and amend and appropriate as listed. Is that what the motion needs to say?
And return to the, and adjust budgets by the end amounts.
Okay, and you adjust this next budget, yeah.
Okay, to have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll still trying to restate all of that. I'll do a roll call vote. I think we've got it. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, next thing on the agenda is adoption of the FY15 revenue and expenditure report. We just done that, didn't we?
No, sir.
No, we didn't? Okay.
You did not. This is next year.
Yes.
I have one correction, if I may.
Okay.
On the extension budget,
Got a line number.
there $5,753 to change their total appropriation to $57,653, and the revenue budget needs to be amended the same.
Yep, that was for what?
Extension. Mr.
Oh, county extension, okay, okay.
Mr. Wythe Morris is retired, and we had cut out of his.
When you said extension budget, I was looking for another budget. I thought, okay.
Cooperative Virginia Tech.
I've got you, I understand.
But long and the short is that they haven't replaced that position. They're getting ready to replace it, and that money needs to be in.
That's our share of the.
Yeah, our additional share, yes. Our next year budget, including that $5,753, or excluding is $96,718,312. So if we add that, then the revenue budget equals that. We will intend to use to balance the budget some dollars out of the surplus for next year. But we believe that it's a fair $1,339,365 of surplus plus the $5,735. So we believe this is a budget that we can live with on both the expenditure and revenue side. there are several things in here that we will be making application for grant funds throughout the year to reinstate some of the programs that were cut from different funding sources. And the last thing on this budget, and we discussed it in the Budget Committee meeting last week, is that we're going to delay the implementation of the refinancing of the school board debt for Rural Retreat and Sheffey. And those amounts under their debt service will go down. I told Lee that our agreement is that whatever the debt service is, we'll pay, but that's all we'll pay in debt service. So that number will change downward. So there will be a substantial savings in their budget in debt service. We just don't know what that is.
Don't know what it is yet, okay. Okay, can we have a motion with the amendments to the revenue and expenditure budget for fiscal year 15?
I'll make a motion, we accept the FY 15 revenue expenditure report with the amendments listed.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just ask, any way we can squeeze out any more to help the school pay VRS?
This is what I would think, Gary, if we can adopt it, and let's look at when we get this thing refinanced and see what savings they are.
Okay.
And at that day, let's just bring that back up for discussion when we find out exactly what those savings are.
And that's what you're talking about, what we talked about in the budget, by us paying the debt directly rather than paying the school board to pay the debt.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Dr. Haslman?
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Off the
make
record,
one-
I got one question.
Yes.
May I ask one question?
Yes.
Mr. Hausman, this is the first time you've ever voted for the budget as a whole.
Well, you all won't let me break anything out.
We don't have light item vetoes.
I know we don't, but this is, we took the trash thing out, we don't have revenue, so I have an opportunity to vote no on it when it comes up. But the one thing I was gonna say is, we didn't raise taxes this year, but fellas, I don't think we're gonna get by with, without doing that. It's just something we need to, be aware of in the future. But thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Dawson.
Well, you always tell us why, too,
Yeah.
about the health department, but that's okay.
Well, the health department, I've almost given up, the lady that came from the health department didn't really even have accurate information. She was an office person, and she was a very nice lady, did a wonderful job, but she couldn't answer the questions I had.
Okay, next thing on the general fiscal year 15 appropriations.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in the past, we have adopted, or last few years adopted an annual budget, and total and appropriated this year. What we request is that you appropriate the carryover in the first quarter of the month so that some of these adjustments can be made as we find out those details. So we're asking that carryovers and 1/4 of the money be appropriated this year.
Okay, you hear a request from the county administrator for the carryover in the first quarter, carryover to the first quarter.
The carryover be appropriated and also the first quarter of.
Be appropriated.
Be appropriated.
I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Have a motion second. Any other discussion?
So we're going to be doing it on a quarterly basis now, which means that we won't have the big drop like we.
We probably will. They won't spend their money till that last.
Okay.
But this gives us the opportunity as we refinance these two debt services to make these changes and get it back in the budget instead of just one big sum. If you did one big appropriation, then we tried to say we're going to de-appropriate money from the school board. That would be sending the wrong message, I think.
Any other discussion? Okay, have a motion on the floor to amend and appropriate to carry over in the first quarter. Have any other discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next thing on the agenda is Jackson Elementary School Water Project. Mr. Dalton?
We now have the architectural review, Brandt's engineer's review rather, and we have the recommendation from the engineers to award and move forth this contract. I have to ask for permission to sign any and all documents necessary to get them started with construction.
Need I have a motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to authorize the county administrator to sign all documents pertaining to the Jackson Elementary School Water Project. Any further discussion?
What's the expected life of that project?
Sir?
How long is it going to take?
It'll take up to about Christmas time. The sooner we get them started, they can get some of this done in good weather.
The letter from Pentry seemed a little bit nervous at the beginning about the contractor, but that.
Well, you ought to be nervous when you leave that much money on.
Well, but they're assuring us that everything is okay.
Yes, sir.
It's backed up by the recommendations, okay.
Bond in place,
It is.
performance bond.
Payment and performance.
I know.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Dr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next thing on the agenda is the Burn Springs Water Project. Mr. Dalton?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the Barron Springs Water Department, the Barron Springs project, the health department portion of it was bid. We have a low bid of, from Central Builders of $935,000, which is well underneath the budget. I asked for permission to award this and asked for permission to sign any and all documents necessary so we can move forth with construction.
Okay, you heard the recommendation and request from the county administrator on the Burn Springs Water Project. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion and second. Any other discussion?
I would just note that they left a lot of money on the table too.
That's a good thing.
That is.
Now, before you vote, the engineering staff has requested that we move forward, actually doing a change order pretty soon on this to push that water line all the way back towards, to the south on 100 towards Patterson. That allows the money for the Castleton Road project to extend water lines up and down little side roads that we didn't intend to on that project. The health department has agreed to that, I believe, tentatively.
The survey will pick up customers. That's where the population is,
Right.
isn't it? Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Other. Is anything, anybody, Mr. Dalton, you have any other thing to bring before the board?
That's
Does any member of the board have anything to bring up? Mr. Hale?
Did members of the board see the advertisement of the public hearing by the airport authority to start condemning land? I wonder what our position can be to not be part of that. If that project goes forward, in my opinion, we're just getting into a quagmire of more and more funding for a bad situation that I don't support anyway. So what part does the county play? Can we be a friend of the court? Can we be openly opposed to condemnation proceedings on that land?
I think you can take any position you like. If you want to send a letter that we're not funding anything that has to do with condemnation, you can send that. You go to the public hearing and register the comments. Is that in the enterprise?
Yep.
Yes.
We've been discussing this airport thing for 2 or 3 years. And sometimes it just takes an event to push people into doing the right thing. I really can't see that this procedure is going to change the status of that airport at all. We know it can't expand. We know it can't be any more than it is, whatever it is. And this is just a time to do the right thing, in my opinion, and call a halt to spending public money out there. So a motion that I would like is a letter saying that we don't support it, have the proper, whoever the proper person is to do that at the public hearing. And also put some language in there, or a separate letter in there, that this is the last year that they'll be in the budget. Now, you've told us they've obligated us for payments on the terminal building. Is there any other hidden agenda out there? So how much more we got to pay on the terminal building, how many more years? Do you have any idea?
I think it's 2, I believe. I think it's 5 years to start with. Y'all paid already 2. This is the 3rd year. So, but that's not a huge amount of money. You could pay that. Just send a payment in and be done with that portion.
Yeah, we're obligated by contract to do that.
Yes, sir. Well, by moral obligation, we don't have a contract. We have a moral obligation agreement that we will pay that.
They never come forward to the board and requested that approval for that money, did they?
Which
Or did
money?
they? For the terminal.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Yeah, they did. They did come forth and ask that, and that's how we decided to fund it. If they borrowed it, actually it's funded through the JIDA loan, small business. And I think the IDA charged them 1% or something to this. David, can you get the numbers of what's left on that and send it over to us?
I can.
Any other comments?
One of my constituents is one of the peoples whose land is getting condemned, and they're wondering why they can't expand for Route 11 or Interstate 81. Why do they need to condemn more land?
For all the planes that land sideways, I think.
Well, that got into another 30-minute discussion.
I mean, we get reports, not every month, every other month or something like that, every quarter, of their activity at the airport. And I hope everybody's been taking note of lands there and how many times they land there and what actually is really going on at the airport, if we're getting a true picture of what the airport is really mainly used for.
Well, do we need action from the board, or is this just gonna die?
Well, if you gotta get a second to get it to a vote, I guess.
Okay.
What was the motion?
That we oppose the condemnation of the land was the main thing, that the expansion is gonna lead to a lot more money if they get that land.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
The opposition to that being Joe speak against it, plus that give note that we will not fund that expansion.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Dr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Mr. Dalton, would you go to that public hearing and voice our?
If you don't mind, I'm also going to write a written letter before I go. Entered in, that will be on the record.
That would have to be a separate motion from that to pull out, and that would have to be a year notice.
Does that need to be a different motion to pull out?
Yes.
Okay, I'll also make that motion, let's see where that goes. Because we've been talking about it for 2 years. They haven't cooperated at all in adjusting their fuel funds. They haven't curtailed their expenditures. We have no idea of what their expenses are really used for. I know they went on with the paving project at the parking lot out there. Their answers to why their storage units are less than anybody else in the region are not satisfactory to me, nor is their fuel pricing satisfactory. So I'd make a motion that we notify them of our intent.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to notify them with what is it, Mountain Empire Regional Airport? Smith-Wythe. That's what the name of it is.
Airport
Commission notified that give them a year's notice and pull out, defund them. Any other discussion?
I don't think I disagree with you, but I'm not sure I'm prepared right now to cast funds to go.
Anybody else?
But after a little more discussion.
Do we need to hear public comment on whether or not we pull out?
At this point, it is an ordinance that created them, so you will have to have a
At the
public
hearing.
And you have to give them, give them 1 year's notice, right? So if you don't do it today, it's going to be funded for 2 more years, FY 15 and 16.
Now, wait a minute, say that again. So if we don't do it today, we're locked in for 2 years? That's not right.
Yeah.
Could we only fund them part of next year? I mean, we don't have to fund them until the date that we pulled out?
I think the ordinance says you have to give them a year's notice.
And the ordinance says you're going to withdraw the year's notice.
And today's the last day of the fiscal year, so.
So do you have time for discussion now if Dr. Hausman
I guess.
needs more
I
discussion?
don't know the answer to your question. Does it have to be on a fiscal year basis, or it could be a partial appropriation? What we do know is that
do give notice and you gotta, that one loan you gotta pay it off.
I understand that.
But I don't know the answer to your question.
The only thing that we can do today, Ian, is vote to set a public hearing regarding pulling out for the airport because it's an ordinance. And then after the public hearing, that's when the vote would be as to whether or not we pull out. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's no way you can pull out for next year's funding?
Or, I mean,
Yeah, unless it's a partial.
are days, is the date that important? I mean, is it like June the 30th or, because right now, we can't make a decision for sure to pull out. All we can do is set the public hearing. We can vote after the public hearing. What I'm asking is, does that lock us in for 2 years?
I don't know the answer.
You see what I'm talking about, Joe?
Yeah, that's a lawyer question.
But I mean, I don't know that anything we can do today would prevent us from.
Well, I think that if we did something today, we would be on the record that we intend to, and it may keep us from having to pay the $62,000 in 16. I don't know.
Well,
I didn't want to pay it last year, I don't want to pay it this year, and I sure don't want to pay it that far ahead with this big thing hanging over their head. If they win this lawsuit for condemnation, they're talking multi-million dollars if they're going to try to move that limestone hill. It'd make a great site for a rock quarry, as you know.
well, then if what we're voting on is just to set a public hearing, I don't have a problem with that.
Well, we can't.
We can't pull out.
We can't do away with the, what am I trying to say is do away with the ordinance until we do have a public hearing.
It gives the public an opportunity to come and talk.
We have to give 2 weeks' notice for the public hearing. So when do you want to set a public hearing?
It would be, I think, the 9th meeting in August. Because we're meeting again next week, as you know.
Yes. So it'd be the 12th of August.
Yes.
So you need to remake that motion to set a public hearing?
Yes.
I think the intent will be clear just by setting, you have to state the intent of the public hearing, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. That we have a public hearing with the intent to cease funding.
Have a second to that motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
This is just to set a public hearing, right? Aye.
Chair votes aye. Get back to my agenda. Okay, that takes care of other. You have your informational package. Everybody can go through. Anything else to bring before the board, Mr. Dalton? Does any board member have anything else to bring up?
Just like I told you, I will not be next board meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah, I expect water rates to go up again.
And trash tags.
Hearing no other business come before the board at this time, I will adjourn this meeting till next Tuesday. We'll adjourn this meeting.